based on the harms that we've experienced in this community. So we've been working in the archives in the city of Decatur. How many know that we even have archives? A couple hands up? Yes. And this municipality is very intentional about recording and letters and documentation. So we've been able to go through the city's archives, and it's been about 18 months we've been visiting and pulling out evidence. As the young people say, facts, right? So we're pulling out the facts to document our harms. And we have documents that are pretty explicit that describe our community, Beacon Hill, as a slum. And that we were brought to bear questions like, you know, are we paying our fair share in taxes to support police and fire? And when you're labeled a slum, typically investors don't want to invest in your community. So that means maybe you've heard of redlining. So I'll break it down. Redlining is when, it's a terminology, it's a map that the federal government created that would identify high-risk areas for insurance, for mortgages, for loans. And when you're redlined, your community would appear on the map as a red spot. And that would be serving notice to the business community, to all that's a high-risk area. So through redlining practices, zoning practices that would limit the kinds of housing that would be in the city of Decatur. For example, in 1988, there was about 100, in the 80s, there was about 100 vacant properties in the city of Decatur, somewhere in that area. And the thought was it was due to a lot of landlords that were negligent in upkeep of their properties. And so the commissioners decided they wanted to change the zoning to disallow duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes to be in the same neighborhood with single-family residences. They thought that was a good idea, and they passed that ordinance. So you know what happened over time? Without those new multifamily units, they basically put out a sign that said, you are not welcome here if you cannot afford to either buy or rent a single-family home. So over time, diversity went down, and it became more of an exclusive community. Thanks to Beacon Hill and the work that we've been doing, we put pressure on the commissioners to change that. So that policy is no longer in place. As of 2 years ago, the policy's been changed, so we can now have these multifamily units coexist with single-family units. The challenge now, of course, is that the price of land is so expensive that even those apartments in a duplex or triplex is going to be expensive. But we'll address that with an additional financial incentive for landlords who keep a multifamily property in place. So I want to just say, as far as the type of harm, the type of redress or repair, it depends on us in terms of how we define it. And with that, I'd like to bring on the next area that we're going to discuss, and that's around Beacon Hill's past. So I mentioned how through urban renewal, that was spoken about. Urban renewal, as James Baldwin said, often meant Negro removal. So there was urban renewal 1 in the 40s, and then urban renewal 2 in the 60s. And as a result, we now look at Beacon Hill, and what do we see? We see Decatur High School. We see the courthouse, the parking garage. We see townhomes. What else do we see? You guys tell me. MARTA, yes, MARTA. Condos, I heard. What else do we see in our once thriving Beacon Hill community that was full of black folks? Tomorrow. Chains, fast food restaurants. Yes. So is that a coincidence, you think? Not at all. By design, it's very intentional. At the time, the people who lived here were not aware of it because they were not in some of these meetings, and they were not part of the correspondence that was going between various entities of the city. But these changes we're now seeing, and we can ask ourselves, how did that happen? So now what we are talking about tonight is we're coming to understand how these changes occurred and how the displacement occurred. So in the 40s, when about 200 homeowners were converted to renters, they created the Allen Wilson homes, apartments. That's what happens when you change homeowners to renters and interrupt intergenerational wealth from passing down from generation to generation. That's what can happen. That's what did happen. So when we look at the past in Decatur, specifically Beacon Hill community, we can understand how the changes in our community result into where we are today. Okay? Any comments or questions at this point? Because this is a discussion, so we'll take any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to ask Molly Davis to come up and speak for a few moments. And Molly Davis is the co-chair. Everybody should know who Molly is. But what you do?
Hey, good evening, you all. How's everybody? I'll move this way. I'm Molly Davis, and I am a lawyer. I do civil rights law, mostly throughout the state of Georgia, suing municipalities, cities, as well as counties for largely abusing or taking the lives of black people, mostly poor black people. But I've been involved in the reparations movement since I was a law student at Georgia State, which I started law school back in 1998. And so I was introduced to an organization by the name of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, in Cobra, which Mama Nabantu is a lifetime member of, and I'm a lifetime member of. And so we did one of the first national reparations symposiums, conversations for students back in 1999. So this has been, and we were just standing on the shoulders of people who had done a lot of work. And I want everybody to know the beauty of the reparations movement is that we all have something to add. It's not just for the lawyers or just for the historians. It's for all of us. The person I remember the fondest when I was first coming in the reparations movement was an elder by the name of Ray Jenkins from Detroit, Michigan. They called him Reparations Ray. Reparations Ray wasn't a lawyer. He was just a brother who kept bugging Congressman John Conyers and saying, hey, what are we going to do about reparations? What are we going until John Conyers introduced a bill called H.R. 40. And that 40 represents what? 40 acres and a mule, right? So he introduced H.R. 40 just to get a study. Just to get a study. I want to be clear now. It wasn't for anyone to receive any direct compensation, any land or anything. It was just, can we just study this, y'all? Can we just see what was the impact of the enslavement of African people for 246 years? And then after that, what was the impact of Jim Crow, right? And then after that, all of these different manifestations of us getting robbed of our wealth. How does that play out? And so that was what H.R. 40 was. And I know we lifted up the name of Sheila Lee Jackson. She had the first hearings on it. He never got a hearing all those years. He passed away and never got a hearing. And so the work that we're doing is a continuation of the work. I know you all know what's happened in Evanston, a great model. We've been to Evanston. It looks very similar to what we have here in Decatur. Their makeup, the racial makeup, people that describe themselves as progressives, you know, white liberals are saying they want change and they support reparations. So we got work to do as a community, but it starts with us, right? It starts with us. It's a bottom up. There's nobody up anywhere that's going to save us or get us reparations. It's going to take each of us. And so I'm excited. I'm grateful. Been knowing Rev for a long time. I appreciate him opening up the church the way that he does. And we're here just trying to figure out how we can work together to educate ourselves. Because, see, y'all are holding stories of something that happened to your people. We need you to tell that story. Like you had an aunt or a grandmama or a grandfather or just an elder in your community that said, this is what it was like, and they gave you the rundown. That's what we need to capture. That helps us identify those areas of injury so that we can move forward as a community and get reparations. Can y'all imagine getting reparations? Like, what is that? Like, whether it's scholarship for, how many have grandchildren you want to make sure they go to college, right? What if it was in the form of a scholarship that every descendant of Beacon Hill was able to go to college for free? What if it was a piece of land that we could collectively say, hey, in this space, when you want to have your family reunions, you don't have to pay no money, just come. And you're a descendant of the Beacon Hill community, you get to do that. The only thing that's holding us back is our own imaginations, because we know that this is a spiritual mission, because our ancestors, you know, they put blood, sweat, and tears into this space, into this area, and it's happening all over the country, all over the country. And I know you all have heard about what's happening in Fulton County. That task force is on, they're incredible. We have just, one of our lawyers is doing research, legal research for them. And let me just say this and I'll get out the way. Did y'all know that they passed laws that prevented black people from working in certain industries? Like you could not, there were certain things you could not do. Now, what's the economic impact if they say you can't do this thing, but they allow white people to do this thing? How does that impact? That cut off a whole line of us in terms of economic impact. So those are some of the things that they're researching right now in Fulton County. And we would submit that we probably have some similar laws on the books in DeKalb County, in the city of Decatur, that again boxed us in and tried to prevent us from doing all that we see we are able to do and all of what's about to happen here in the next coming months as things keep moving forward. So thank you all. It's good to see everybody. I was coming to pick you up too. Ms. Doyle, good to see you.
Thank you, Brother Maoli. Appreciate that. Yes, let me add a question. How many of you are aware that the city of Decatur, every 10 years they do a strategic plan? By show of hands? Okay, so the city of Decatur's 2030 strategic plan includes 10 initiatives, and among those initiatives is a reparations task force. And so we want to hold them accountable for that. And it didn't get in there by chance. It became an initiative largely because of the work that's being done by a lot of your neighbors, a lot of people who are on the ground with pushing this fight, making this important, making sure the commissioners understand how important this is. And we're not going to let them launch any kind of reparations task force. It has to be one that is led by who? Us. That's right, us. So it's going to be a community-led reparations task force. And we're in community this evening to begin to plan for that launch so that when it's done right the first time, and only one time you get to make that impression. So I want you to be aware of that. That's one of our objectives, is to prepare for a community-led reparations task force in the city of Decatur. And who sits on that task force will largely depend on what we think who should be in those seats in terms of their qualifications, their backgrounds, what they bring to the commission. So that's another important objective that we have as a community, to be able to impact that launch of that reparations task force. You should also know, thanks to the work of Maoli Davis, Mama Nabantu, Commissioner Lisa Meyer, and others, that the city has granted us $25,000, and that grant will be used to continue to do our archival research. It helps us develop a communications plan to communicate to you all, because we want to be able to fill all the pews in this facility. We want to be able to ultimately have to go to a bigger space, because there's such an outpouring of concern and support and people who are on fire about trying to do better for our community. In just a few moments, we're going to allow you to break up in groups and answer the question, reimagine Beacon Hill, reimagine Black Decatur with reparations. Powerful question. What would it look like? What would it feel like when you walked into this space of Black Decatur, Beacon Hill? So we're going to allow us to come together in small groups and to answer the question, what would Decatur look like with reparations? Reimagine Decatur, reimagine Beacon Hill in terms of what it would look like if we had resources. And those resources can come in different forms, but call them resources because it's something that we can use. We can determine how we use them. We can determine when we use them. But the important thing is, it's for our community's benefit. And we need your input in terms of how that question can be answered. Any questions on those guidelines? Because if not, we can go right into some groups. Yes, Ms. Doris.
I probably could talk loud than that. Okay. So relative to the task force, and I know you got funding from the city for the task force on reparations, right?
That funding for the city, that $25,000 is just to help us continue the archival research, develop a communications plan, things like
But it's to the task force.
No, the task force not created yet.
Okay, that's where I'm getting to. So would you talk a little bit about when and how that's going to be created, and what kind of people or level of people or what walks or whatever you're expecting to be on it, so that we have.
Great question. All right, we'll let Molly address that one.
Thank you. So Fulton County, they are in Georgia, they are the furthest along in the task force process than anybody else, so their whole county. It is led by a historian who is the co-chair with Marcus Coleman, who's a community activist. So the two of them, and you all probably have seen Marcus, he and I marched in a bunch of protests together, but she's like historically rooted. So what they have is each commissioner got to appoint, so the county commissioners got to appoint a member of the task force, as well as there's one other person who got to appoint. So that made the task force. They have an agenda. So that task force, they got $250,000 to do, to generate what's called a harm report, like to do the research, to look at all of the things, even those jobs I was telling you about. So they've involved the National Conference of Black Lawyers, which I'm a part of. We have a group of students, some from Clark, Atlanta, like Tamar, and others. We had a group of students who are helping do that research. And then they just hired a lawyer who's helping to do some of the research and writing. So once they create the harm report, then they submit it to the commission with their recommendations. And then it'll go from there. So it's a lengthy process. They're about 18 months in. I think their harm report is due, I think it's before the end of the year. So you're talking about 2 years, it's the process being about 2 years. They submit that, and then they'll have, then we'll see what comes of it. So we are very much in the infant stages still. We've done a little groundwork, got a little, got in there and found some documents, but there's a lot left to be done, a lot of input that's needed, and a lot of stories to be told from the community, so we can gather it. So that's kind of how the process will go. So we hope to have a resolution by February, and the resolution will just be an acknowledgement, and we're following that Evanston, Illinois did, and that Fulton and City of Atlanta. The first time I saw a resolution or was a part of a resolution was back when C.T. Martin was still alive in City of Atlanta. He introduced the first, it was a resolution, and, we thought, man, we close. That was 20 years ago. So it took, but I think, honestly, we're going to see some progress here in the next 3 to 4 years in terms of some decisions made. And so we just want to be at the table, the table got to be a big table. All of us got to be at that table. Okay. Great question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was curious. Appreciate that feedback. Great question, Doris. I was curious about, do you see how incorporating, I know Decatur High School got an African-American group. How do we incorporate young people early to understand this work? You see all the stuff going on around the state about the Black history. Some places, no funding. So I was curious about what's our thought on how we incorporate the young voice.
That's a great question, how to get the young. So we want to get the young people involved because part of this, so one part of it is it's about honoring our ancestors, right? By doing the work, what we're saying is we recognize that they mattered. We recognize that what they went through was real. But the other part of it is in who we become in the work, who our children become. Like when they know what they people have been through and here they are, they still standing, it changes kind of their sense of what their purpose is supposed to be in life, right? It can't be just to, party and just kick it. It's got to have I'm tied to a people. I'm tied to a people who really put in work here. And so what we've done in the past with the bringing down the Confederate Monument was we centered the young people. So we had the young people involved in all of the marches, the teach-ins. When they get back to school, we'll have a teach-in, and we will want y'all, community, to come over to the high school to sit with the young people and to give them some wisdom, right? We're going to sit them down and let them hear, the harm so that, we can't let other people tell us who our children are. They will respond to us when we are authentic and we are just real with them. So we're going to connect with the Black Student Union that's there. We also are working with the gents. They have a gents organization that work with the young men. So our organization, Black Man Lab, is going to be working in the schools this year because we got to be in there with them, and it's not enough to just work after school, but embedded so that our young brothers are not getting kicked out of class and, all the shooting that happened up here at the high school. So we got to do more, but it's all connected. It's all connected. We're going to get them in.
It's so good to be here. My name is Charmaine. I'm with the Praise House Project down on the corner, inviting these very conversations in that work. So I'm grateful, Brother Mauli and everyone, for gathering. I am an Agnes Scott alum, and I was one of the founders of WCASI, the African American Women's Association at Agnes Scott. So I am activating all of that trigger is happening for me. And I want to feed the young people in through that. And my daughter goes to Beacon Hill middle school. And with the Praise House being here, I'm hoping that we can create some sort of at least a cameo of curriculum that is based in history and oral histories that are collected from those who are in this room, hopefully. I've been attending services here, enjoying Lily Hill Baptist Church, and as a community partner, we hope to have an oral histories archive, so maybe there's a way to intersect, I think. And I do know Carcheek and the Fulton County efforts there, and so I'm coming as a witness and a resource of how it's been done in other places, but this is my community. So I'm looking forward to being of any service that I can to this effort.
I'm going to stand up this time because just comment. And I like the idea, and it may be new to the Alliance or to others coming in. But for those of us who grew up on these streets, born, raised, Grady babies, walked to school, went through the whole integration, the whole 9 yards, we have told our stories so many times, and I have yet to see them in print anywhere. We just participated in the City of Decatur's 200th anniversary year. As y'all know, I'm the primary organizer for Decatur Day these days, so this is why. But we bought all into that. All of us here participated, told our stories from families to businesses to everything. And what I saw produced was so minimalist that it broke my heart. Now, when you say you want to gather stories, I've told Phil this before, we've given stories. They're not anywhere. And then we had, that's the thing, where are they? Because we all went from Legacy Park to the rec center to our homes to individuals all around. So I would just ask that while you're doing the archiving, go to the City of Decatur for the 200 stories and find out where those stories are and incorporate that in the thing. We don't mind continuing to talk. We'll talk about this forever. But it's tiring to see nothing happen. I also participated in the Georgia State project by yours, and I spoke to the fifth graders at the school off Columbia. I'd never heard of the name, Tally. Okay, all right, yeah. Which was really, really nice. I love that place and stuff. I didn't even know it was over there, to tell you the truth. But I won't talk too long because y'all know I can go on forever. The other thing is that I know this is long-term planning and will take some time to do. But most of the people who knew the true history and experienced it are lying out there in Washington Memorial Gardens, in Hillendale, and elsewhere. They're not here anymore on this earth. We don't know how long we're going to be here. So somewhere, just in terms of time, to get these stories quickly, okay? I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow, but I'm willing, but it can't be 3 years from now because I can't promise you that. So just again, incorporating don't reinvent. It's already out there, and we never see it printed and in one place. And I'll just say that, asking you that as we're willing and participating, but don't make our involvement long-term before you start. Okay, all right.
So noted. We'll take that as an action item to ask specifically about the 200 stories and where we can find those documented. Because once we get the documents, then we can then control how it gets produced. Yes, and yes. You had your hand up.
And one other quick thing, the plaza at the Record Center, yes. And when all that was done, the pictures inside
Thank you for those comments. Yes. Thank you. We appreciate that.
We'll report back, right? Because what we're hearing and we're clear about is that people can't be culture vultures, right? Where they just come and get our stuff, get stories, and then so we'll take it up, right? It'll be our charge as an organization to recover and to hold that and to publish it, to make it available, and then be able to tell y'all where it is.
Yes.
Say, here, come to the Beacon Hill website. Here it is. So we'll work on collecting that up. That'll be a part of our work.
Yes, sister, tell us your name.
Hi, my name is Shanab Favors, and I'm mostly here for information. My friend, she invited me to this event, my friends, and I'm not from the area. So what my question to you all is, how do I start reparations? Do I have to be tied to the land to start reparations? Do I contact the North American Organization of Reparations to find out if the community that I currently live in has a task force? Do I go back to Syracuse, New York, where I am from? I was raised here, but do I go back to Syracuse, New York and go with a task force there, or do I go to Decatur, Georgia, where I live since 1978, and join a task force there? How do I move forward? I'm mostly here for information. I don't know if this is appropriate, but
Yes, it is. Yeah, and the good news is, sitting right behind you, you just turn around, and Mama Nabantu is your point person, so please have that conversation with her, and you will be connected. Yes. Yes, so 2 more questions, and we're going to go into our group.
My question is, well, first of all, my name is Edith Sutton. I live in this community now, but I'm not a Beacon Hill native. So my question is, are there boundaries? Is there a boundaries? Where are the boundaries of Beacon Hill? Is it all over
Yes.
or what?
Beacon Hill is a 1 square mile area. It's bounded by McDonough Street, right in front of the high school, to the east, Howard Avenue on the south, Ponce to the north, and Adair Street, Water Street to the west. So it's a 1 square mile neighborhood area. But it also pertains to, but the harm wasn't limited to that area. So all of Decatur is what we encompass in terms of our concern being here tonight. Okay?
But I just want to share one other thing.
Yes.
I'm originally from the south side of Chicago, right? It's not about, right? We are here now.
Now, yes.
Wherever your feet are, fight. Like, you here, let's win right here together. I mean, all the time our history was they would take one of us, a child, take them to another plantation 20 miles away, and then a mama and a father would have to take that child and raise that child. That's our culture. That's what we do. So we're here. This is, we claiming this, and we got to win here.
Yes.
And when we win it for the historic residents and for the children that are still here. And so it's not about us necessarily individually getting anything, but we know what's right, that 1 square mile, some folks got harmed, and if we're in that space, we got to make it right.
Yes.
That's our duty. So welcome.
Yes.
Everybody, welcome.
Yes.
We organize with people, whether they live in the city of Decatur or not. As long as they want to be a part of this, everybody is welcome. Okay, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Please, go ahead. Tell us your name.
My name is Vivian Pollard, and I see so many faces here. When I come back to Decatur, it's like coming home.
When I came from New York, first place I ever lived south was in Decatur. I remember Elizabeth Wilson bringing me and my sons a welcome wagon basket. I'm in, everybody say Lithonia, but it's actually Stonecrest, a new city. So when I hear anything going on here, I always come hopefully to see Elizabeth first. I love her. She helped me grow up in the South. She showed me ways I didn't understand. And when you say Decatur, I'm coming. I'm coming home. This is my first Southern home. I work for the City of Decatur Police Department, CID. She helped me get that job. I went over to Agnes Scott. She helped me go over there. It wasn't quite a fit. It was too Harry Potter-ish for me. But Decatur is my home, and I so want, you know, when we talk about historically and all that we've gone through, I'm going to have a birthday next month. I'm going to be 81 years young. And we talk about what we've gone through, and we've all gone through a lot. We've gone through things that, if God did not give us the spirit that he gave us, we are spiritual people. Let's don't get it mixed up, the difference between religiosity and spirituality. We are spiritual people. And I think we are chosen people. We were chosen for what had to be done to bring the heartbeat and humanity to other folks that don't look like us. I don't think any other ethnic people could have done what we've done and go through what we've gone through and stand here and proud as we are and don't hate nobody. I don't hate nobody. If I saw a little black boy, a little white boy in the street getting ready to run over, I'd save them both and give my life up. So I stand here. I'm so glad to see you. I'm so proud of you, young man over there. You make me proud every time you see. I tell people, I know him. They say, girl, you don't know him. I say, yes, I do. So proud of you. So in concluding, I want to say, the time is at hand. This is what we call the eternal now, the eternal moment. It's at hand. Our consciousness is rised, we're rising, and we're waking up, and we're coming from up under that spell. Let's talk about that spell we've been up under. We're waking up, and we're rising up. And if you don't believe it, all that old political stuff, that they just done got real crazy, ain't they? They done got so crazy, they'll mess around and put a woman in by mistake. And in conclusion, what I say, let us come on back home to ourselves. Take them same water hoses that the Jim Crow area sprayed us on them. Turn them on ourselves and cleanse ourselves. Get rid of all the hate, the pain, and that would just think that we couldn't see the next day. Cleanse ourselves of all of that and come back up pure, and then find out where we came from. Where is our home? They try to tell us we came on some ships. Some other people said we was already here. Find out where we come from, where's home. And then we come on back home to ourselves, all of us together. And like one of my favorite movies was Forrest Gump. Life is like a box of chocolate. You never know. But the box was chocolate, remember. Remember, it was chocolate, wasn't it? You never know what you're going to get. And that's all I got to say about that.
Thank you, Ms. Vivian. Yes, appreciate that. And we're going to have a word from a very special lady who I got to meet. I got to meet this lady through Tamar's great-grandmom.
Good evening, everybody. And if all of the Decatur people who have been here a long time, they know who I am. I'm Mary Jo White. I was Mary Jo last year. And we live, my home is right in the back of the church, where the church is. We lived on Moorhead Place. And I wanted to talk to the director who made the Decatur High shirts. They left Moorhead off. So in order for the Atlanta Avenue, in order to get to Robin Street, you had to get to Moorhead, the church here. And Miss Wilson and I worked together. I worked at Grady for several years, 30-some years. When I left Grady, I went to Decatur, City Decatur Police School Crossing. I worked there for 20-some years. And this is my home. And it's a whole lot of different changes has been made here. But I graduated in 1951 from Heron Street High. And it was a lot of, and I worked my way, and I graduated from vocational nursing school. That's where I left and went to Grady and worked for 32 years. But it was a lot of segregation and what have you, so forth during that time. But we knew who we were, and we knew what we wanted. So if a white boy passed me, he said, "Good morning." I said, "Good morning." That was all. We didn't have that mess around in Decatur. Everybody had their home, but the housing project was right over there where it was. So we had unity in Decatur. And when the disunity started, a lot of time people think if they get up a little more than probably they have, they supposed to ignore you. So that's when the disunity started. And some of these ladies who laughing, they know what I'm talking about. So in a few more weeks, I'll be 90 years old. And I thank God for being here, and I've been here in this church for 75 years. And we have a good pastor and what have you here now. And whatever you all do, if we just trust in the good Lord and work together, we can get things done. A lot of our problem is this. You talk too much and you're not doing nothing. So, you know what? You know what I mean? Just trust in the good Lord, work together, and do what you get to do, and you can get it done.
All right. Thank you, Miss Mary Jo. Appreciate that. Sure.
Yes, I understand what she's talking about. My name is Bernadette Armour Farrell. And my parents, my mother, my aunt, they were among the community leaders in the city of Decatur. And I remember, I'll just say some white folks coming to get the history about this block that we're talking about. And they gave everything. They knew what street. My mom and my aunt were, they just knew everybody and everything. And what I want to say to all of us, it's about our children and our grandchildren. And that's one of the main reasons why I would even attempt to be involved in this, to try to make a better place for them. But they can't move forward without knowing what happened in the past. We got to tell our children. Nobody's going to tell them like we can tell them. So that the mistakes that were made, I mean black and white, the mistakes that were made in the past won't have to be repeated in the future. One of the most heartbreaking things, I think, since I've lived this life was when I saw the city of Decatur go to a black neighborhood and close up that elementary school and divide these children into 3 different groups to send to white schools to keep them from being closed, which means our poor little children had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get ready to go to the little white school. And at the time, I was retired, and I would drive the bus, and it broke my heart to see the little white kids skipping down the street about 8 o'clock going to school when our children were so tired and so sleepy because they had to get up so early to go to meet the demands of whatever the city of Decatur had going on. These schools didn't have enough participation. So because they didn't, the federal money wasn't going to be coming. So their solution was to go to the black neighborhood, the projects, as we were called, and take our little babies and bus them to 3 different schools. They closed their elementary school for whatever reason. I have never found out, but I was a student at Georgia State, and when I found out, it was too late. Because, see, I was going to get my group together. It just was not going to happen. But we, as a people, have been too apathetic. We sit back thinking somebody else going to do the job. I'm 75, and I know my days are numbered. You know, once you get past 60, you start talking to the Lord more, you know, and asking him to give you that time. We don't have a whole lot of time. A lot of our children have already suffered. We'll never be able to get our young people to get involved until we let them know we got their backs. You know, this ain't gonna happen. What's going on at Decatur High, when they come to us with a problem, we can't leave it up to these white folks. These are our children. We know what makes them tick. We know what they're capable of and what they're not capable of. I lived in a city, when I lived in the city of Decatur, and I tell people this and they look at me wrong, but I didn't know prejudice. I knew where my little community was, and when I went outside that community and gathered with whites, I didn't have any problem. They treated me like I was somebody, and I treated and respected them like they were somebody. And my thing is, when did it change? You know, what happened? Did we just be so apathetic and let money and position and whatever just keep us back? But somehow, to me, our number one thing is to let our children know. We got your backs now. We need to find out what their problems are now and get to solving them now, because that's what they want. They're very impatient, and if they can't see no end in sight for them, they won't start nothing with us. Okay?
I won't be very long. My name is Louise Wilson Thrower, and I am a part of this community. I was born right across well, I don't know which way to turn now because everything has changed, but I was born right over there on North Brooks Court. I went to this church. This was my home church. I grew up here. I did a lot of work in this community. South Decatur Community Council, I don't know if you heard of it, that's in your archive, but we was instrumental in doing a lot that's taken place today in Decatur, what changes that was made. We was very instrumental in that. My concern is the information that's in your archive. It's not complete. You know, we go so far and we stop. We don't tell the whole story. You know, that was when I moved back to Georgia, that was a division where it was impossible to have a black representation in the government, city of Decatur. I, along with 3 others, brought a class action suit. Now, I don't think that's in your archive, because I've never seen it printed. Brought a class action suit. If you run around Decatur, you should know about that. And that's why we had a black representation. With the government came down and told them they had to do it. And they made the vision. That's when Elizabeth Wilson was elected, you know, and I know you too, Miss Paula. But if anybody from Old Decatur, I know you because I have knocked on many doors, I have walked many streets, but I want to see the information correct and complete. Even this name, Beacon Hill, where did that come from? Who named that? I was born here, and I didn't never hear that until I was grown, Beacon Hill. I remember when our first elementary school was built, and we named it Beacon Elementary School. That's the first time we heard the word beacon. And I was in the 7th grade then. So a lot of this stuff, you know, if you're going to print it right. We're going to tell our children the truth, not half, because they're going to just keep that lie going, keep that lie going, keep that lie going. So, but a lot of stuff that's been said, but let's get the foundation right before we can move forward.
I'm glad you said that. Before we go there, I just want to say this. The brochure that you have is something that was done by the city of Decatur. We did not do it. We did not put that out. We're just sharing it because it's what's out there. It at least gives you the map of the area. So for those who want to know what the boundaries are, and it gives you some pictures of businesses, and it gives you some history. Now, we have recognized that there's a weakness and a shortfall in the narrative around our history in this town. So there is a link. It's called The People's History. Our co-chair, Fanta Hai, who's not here today, but she, as well as representatives from the community at Georgia State University and others, did some very important work in writing the true history of the city of Decatur. And there's a link available. We know if everyone has signed in, we'll send that link out. It's called The People's History of Decatur. And it will break down going way back. So this land is Muskogee Creek Nation, a former nation, separate from the so-called United States at that time. And Supreme Court decisions affirmed it as a separate nation. Until back in 1836, the Indian War, with a Trail of Tears, resulted in 20,000 Native Americans going to Oklahoma and Alabama. So we know that the history needs to be factual, and we've done some work in that regard. So look forward to getting that link. Everyone has given us a legible email address. We will send it out as part of an action item from this evening's meeting. And I saw a hand. Lisa, yes, so Lisa, who's our commissioner, Lisa Meyer.
Hi. Hey, everybody. I was coming to close my mouth and open my ears, but I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I'm 10 days engaged. Thank you. First of all, let me say I am thrilled to be here with you all. I don't know if you remember, but last year, during the centennial celebration of City of Decatur, it was very important to me that we kind of had our own celebration on the square. So I met with Mayor Wilson and some of your relatives, because I recognize your names, to create a concert. And the reason I'm bringing up the concert is because we had people who were working the VIP section entrance. And the VIP section entrance workers would say, how will I know if someone is a Beacon elder? And I said, you let anyone in who says Trinity High, Beacon Elementary, Sims, Armour. I named a bunch of names. And literally, all I had to do was list the community leaders, the high school, and anyone who came to that desk and gave a reference to the Beacon community, came on in the VIP and ate and drank and enjoyed the legendary Lakeside, Brick, and John Boy and surround sound. And we had a good time. But the most important part of that concert was, in between each band, we had members of the community come up on stage and tell their memories, tell their stories, talk about the important things they remembered about growing up in this community. How does that tie into reparations? Reparations is really all about us, right? And so I look to Mama Nabantu here, who 20 years ago when I moved to City of Decatur, also moved to my street. And she really is the street's mother. She doesn't know that, but she is the mother of Fayetteville Road. And I did not think I had the time, energy, or capacity to take on affordable housing, equity in Decatur, and reparations. I learned the hard way that reparations is a priority. And I am very concerned about how you feel about the history of Decatur being conveyed. That matters to me very much. Someone mentioned that there was a concern about what's in the webs. Forgive me, I'm known for my candor. The white folks were real bold and brazen. They didn't hide much. There was no shame. So the transgressions, the disrespect, the alienation, the disenfranchisement is very easy to find because they were proud of it. Okay? And so as we sit here and look through the archives in these research sessions, I see members of your family's names. I see documentation of what has been stripped from you. I see rosters of schools. I see newspaper articles where there are photos of 5 white men standing there proud of the fact that they've taken over your homes, your grandmother's homes, and dozed them down, all for the sake of what they called progress, when we all know it was discrimination, when we all know that it was segregation, when we all know that it was oppression. And so now, we're in a point at the City of Decatur's history where we have leadership that's willing to do the work to, 1, preserve your stories, but 2, to figure out a way to rectify the wrongs. I'm using that word very carefully because the word that I would have said is compensate, but that tends to push people away because we associate compensation with money, right? And rectifying a wrong may not necessarily relate to money. It might relate to access. It might relate to education. It might relate to public art. It might relate to making sure that we're preserving the community's history. It might relate to access to your neighborhood that you feel like you don't have anymore. And so while we're having these discussions, led by, Phil and the Honorable Mr. Davis, who when I tell people I know him, they're like, you don't know him. I get it too. I get it too. Yes, I do. He's my neighbor, okay? But when we're having these conversations, please don't shy away from thinking about what rectifying wrongs looks like. There was once a thriving community here. There's still a community here. We're still here. And so now it's time to make sure that we're here, but we're as impactful as we need to be. We have the resources that we need to have, and that we're fostering growth for future generations, and that we're not lying or hiding the dirt that got us here today, right? That's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable. I'm one of 2 black commissioners on the city commission, and I'm not running for re-election. So let's make this very clear. Y'all have 3 years and 5 months to get whatever we need to get done, okay? And once we do that, once we figure out what it is we need to get done, we need to empower whoever's going to be next in these seats to carry it forward. So I'm listening. I've met a lot of you. There are some of you whose siblings I've met or cousins I've met. And I not only want to hear your story, I want to hear what I'm doing right. I want to hear what we're doing wrong. And I want to make sure that what matters to you is what matters to me. I've only been here 20 years. Y'all have been here 200. And I do have one tie to this land. My grandmother was Muskogee, documented Muskogee. But what did my grandmother do when her parents died? She decided she was going to be black so she didn't have to go to a reservation. That's what she decided to do. And so that's my family's history, you know? And so this is meaningful to me. It's meaningful to you. I want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah. Do it, yes. I was actually going in that direction. This is the last comment, and then what we're going to do, instead of splitting up into groups, since we're getting so much out as a big group, we're going to take the remaining time and stay in session.
Okay, I just have a comment and a question. And my comment is with regards to videotaping and having authentic documentation and the stories being told. I remember listening to an interview by Steven Spielberg. He created something called the Shoah Project. Being Jewish, when he found out that a lot of the Holocaust survivors getting old, dying, who was going to tell the story? Who was going to be a witness? And so they have an extensive videotaping project, and I just want to suggest, take a look at that Shoah project that Steven Spielberg put together to document history, to make sure that people cannot say that it did not happen, and so the Shoah project. And then my question is, I knew we took down the Confederate statue and that supposedly John Lewis statue, when is that?
In fact, I walked by it today, and the area is cordoned off.
Wonderful. August of this year.
They're starting it now.
Okay. Okay.
They have started it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
August 24th at 11 a.m.
One here and then one there, okay?
My name is Lila Miller, and I've heard a lot of talk about Ms. Wilson, and of course I respect what she's contributed to Decatur. My recollection, the first elected black official in DeKalb County was John Lewis. And I think that he's still with us, and I think that John Evans, I'm sorry. Thank you, John Evans. And I think that he has something to contribute to this conversation, and I'm hoping that we reach out to him also.
You're next.
Hi, my name is Shavonda Swint, and I am a native. Actually, I was born in this church. So all of my records, I was just asking the pastor about looking at some of my family history from here. My family is actually South Deshaun Indian, and that's over off in the, we grew up with tomahawks in the front yard and everything, but I have family members that are from Decatur, 315 Madison Avenue. So we've been here since we left South Georgia in the 1940s. My grandfather bought his house and was displaced. Over here was the courthouse. It was a Chevrolet dealership at the CVS. And then it was a movie theater. And then over there at Benchwarmers was a dry cleaners where my mom was able to take Vandy's dry cleaners. She was able to take in clothes and do washing. So they wanted his property. So we ended up having to go across the track. Remember they had over the track and cross the track? So we had to go across the track over there on Madison. In the cul-de-sac where nobody wanted to live. You know, 315 Madison Avenue is a cul-de-sac. It's a dead end. Before they put that ravine in there, it wasn't nothing but desolate. It stank. It was real bad. But they displaced my family. They took everything, leveled it. But I was able to see the original library. The library, the Sycamore Street Library, the original place was that old Starbucks. I don't know if you all from Decatur, you know that the library was right there on right across from Parker's. My mom used to take me to the library, and we used to look over slave documents. So I remember seeing these with my own eyes. I went to Sycamore Street when I got divorced and had to move back to the city of Decatur, insinuating circumstances. But when I went back to Sycamore Street Library to ask them what happened to those documents that I witnessed, I want to show them to my children. They said, ma'am, they microfilm. I said, well, okay, I'll go to the microfilm room. Let's do this. Oh, ma'am, they're not here. You know where those logs at? That's the reason why I'm telling y'all this, because I'm going to try to find these for the archives. They're in a private collector's home over there by Agnes Scott. When she say bold and brazen, bold and brazen. These were slave logs that had everybody's history in it. You were able to look through, and you might not recognize some names you might do, but that's part of history and the city of Decatur history that I myself saw with my own eyes. I am a little older. I probably don't look it, but I am. But I saw this with my own eyes in the 80s, and I really would like to show this to my grandson. I have a grandson. I would love to show this to him. And these documents have been removed from public view, and it's not supposed to be that way. From what I understand, the bylaws of the library, that it wasn't supposed to be that way. And every time I went in there, they kept saying, ma'am, it's microfilm. It's microfilm. We know exactly what you're talking about. It's microfilm. Never found it. Kept asking. I have a niece to go to Agnes Scott. She's and then I have brothers and my stepfather. They're all Morehouse alumni. It's my ex-husband, so Morehouse man. So they investigated for me, and it's at a private collector's house. Wouldn't give me an address. I sure was gonna ring the doorbell, but wouldn't give me an address. That's brazen.
Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions or comments at this point? Yes. Oh, this gentleman, and then I'm going to bring it back to you.
My name is King. Food to eat, pizza, well, that's it.
Then I'll come to you.
Good evening. Several years ago, there was an African-American studies group at Thankful Baptist Church, and we were interviewed, several of us were interviewed, and they even set up a room that showed old slave-type furnitures and things of that nature. And I think that information would be very good to have. As I say, we were filmed, recorded. They even asked us even about how we lived during segregation, and what was Herring Street like when I graduated in '58. Okay, so those are the kind of things they ask us, and it was very interesting. And I think somehow we should contact that group to make sure that we can get that information, so it shouldn't go to waste either. Because I think I was on audio for about an hour, so I don't know what they did with that. And I also had a young man that called me from Elizabeth, New Jersey, and interviewed me online about what was it like to grow up in Atlanta, in Decatur, and I never found out who that was, never received any information about what I said. Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to bring up that Columbia Seminary has a reparations program. If you are of African descent, you can go there for free. I know people don't know that. Yes, Columbia Seminary. You can go and get your degree at Columbia Seminary if you are a descendant of those who were enslaved. And I would like to see that at Agnes Scott. Yes, I would like to see that at Agnes Scott. And you know, the Praise House rested at Emory before it came here to acknowledge slavery and dispossession there. And we went to Oxford and did their oral history archives. They only have a file and small little corner for their exhibitions and stuff too. So we advocated for more resources and attention to their history. And we would like to see a perpetual care for their historic sites, that the land that they sit on would always be somehow owned by the people and never by Emory or elsewhere. So I'm like coming fresh off of Emory's example. They're changing names of roads and all, and My family's enslavers were the Fuquays, as in the big developers and the big philanthropists in Atlanta. My family was enslaved by the Fuquays. We were out of North Carolina. So while I was at Emory, while they have buildings named by the Fuquays, I acknowledged my ancestry. And so my work provokes these conversations, is what I'm hoping to do while it's here, but for Agnes Scott. And so we're lifting up the story of Nell, not Nell, that's my ancestor, Aunt Gina. Has anyone ever heard the name Aunt Gina? Aunt Gina was the matriarch woman who was enslaved by George Washington Scott out of Florida, and her descendants, her 3 sons, migrated here after emancipation with George Washington Scott and lived in Beacon Hill. And so for me, that is a continuation of slavery. Those who were employed by Agnes Scott were the women, but the men were employed by George Washington Scott in a corn mill, in a fertilizer mill off of Panthersville. And these were descendants of those who were enslaved by them in Florida. So now they're here in Decatur, and he's regained his wealth after emancipation, and he's lost everything from the war. And he discovers a fertilizer technique where they grind bones of animals down. And that mill is off of Panthersville. The men of Beacon Hill work there, and they were paid with molasses. They were not paid with money, for decades, So Agnes Scott holds significant history with Beacon Hill and the disparity, the inequity, the wealth structure. And Agnes Scott actually integrated in the 70s, and the first sister who finally matriculated was 89, So that's actual integration. So I want to bring up reparations for Agnes Scott. And I think reparations with institutions, is where I would like to see the commission also address.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for that, Charmaine. We certainly appreciate that. Yeah, so right now we're getting close to 7:30, so we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we're going to save the breaking out in the groups and reimagining Decatur, Black Decatur, for our next meeting. But before we depart this evening, there's a couple things I want to bring to your attention. One of which is one of our next efforts, a big project, is our 4th annual Pan-African Festival. That's August 17th, and in the square, in Decatur Square, 4th annual Pan-African Festival, and our theme is based on Liberation Rising. Remember, resist, rejoice. So it all fits in to why we're here tonight, because we're going to remember, and we have resisted, and we're going to continue to rejoice as a community. So that's so very important. So I thank everyone for coming out this evening. Mawali, we got some final comments? Oh, yes. Yes. August 31st, Decatur Day.
August 31st, on the project grounds, y'all. They call it everything else, but right there at the projects where Trinity Place apartments were, that's where we are having Decatur Day these days. We're not at McCoy Park anymore, but and it's always the Saturday before Labor Day. This year, right across from the rec center on those grounds. We were there last year, had a great time. There's something about those grounds, y'all. We felt it last year, okay? There's something about it, and I call it going home. This year's theme is class reunion. So for everybody, class, from Heron Street, and I'm so glad to see y'all Heron Street folks. I didn't think we were still living, a couple of folks, but I'm glad because I need to talk to Vivian back there too and others. But from Heron Street Trinity High, and since 1965, Decatur High, because that was when it got integrated. Okay, so the black students that came out of there because of integration. Now, we are particularly recognizing the class of 67 from Trinity High. That was the last graduating class before the school was closed. So we'll be under the big tent, Greg. Okay, so I make sure we got the big tent. And celebrating. So we're asking that it's still family reunion all the time, okay, because we're all one family. But every class, get with your classmates, bring your little chair, tent, and food, or whatever y'all bring and stuff, and come on out, and let's just celebrate this family reunion by recognizing our classes as a group, okay? And one other thing I'm going to say, and I'll shut up. I have to say this. Beacon Hill, y'all, those of us who grew up, we don't know nothing about Beacon Hill, okay? We've adapted and adjusted to it simply because that's what it's been renamed for our purposes. I mean, wasn't renamed by us. So what I will tell you in checking this out, and Phil, this is why there's been some reluctance to the Beacon Hill Alliance. It's like, what the hell is, oh, excuse, I'm forgetting the church. Okay, I'm sorry. Y'all forgive me, okay? But, because there was no relevance or relationship. But what we did find out, and that's why we can partner, it's documented in the HUD records, Housing and Urban Development. That's the name they gave to our area, was Beacon Hill. So when urban renewal came about, all the documents, my mom's, we owned our house. So they gave us $10,000 now, okay? Back then, you'd think there was $1 million, but my mama worked that $10,000, and we built another house, out on some land her dad had. But the thing is, that's what HUD and the federal government had reference to our area as Beacon Hill. So once all of us were gone, and the regentrification and all of the stuff you see now, Beacon Hill sounded so classy. And that's what you hear now these days. So we're getting used to that, but just know it was the bottom for years. That's all we knew as black people was the bottom. And then after that, that was in the first urban renewal thing. And since that time, it was just Decatur to us. So Beacon Hill is a new jargon, but we're okay with it. We know, but this is why we got to tell this history.
Yes, appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
It was a Beacon Elementary. There was a count. So, y'all, I don't know if this has already taken place, but Brother White has just recently retired, and this brother has served this city, our people, just with a spirit of humility and love, and I just thought it would be remiss of us if we didn't just take a moment and just let him know how much we love and appreciate him and his work. So, brother, thank you so much. And if I could just say one last thing, Mama Nabantu and I co-chair the Reparations Committee for Beacon Hill, and we're grateful for you all to come out tonight. We're very, very grateful. We've seen a lot of ups and downs in this work, but this is real. For y'all to come and, 90, 80, 75, however old you are, for you to make your way into this sacred space is profound. And we're not missing that, and we get the assignment. So we got work to do. to capture wherever y'all have been interviewed. We're going to try to find who talked to you, where it is, and we're going to try to pull it all together and get a hold of it. All right. All right. Daytime. We will do some, thank you. We will do some noon meetings. How about that? Noon meetings, and I know that we can put together a little lunch so we can eat and get some space. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank y'all. Thank you to Brother Phil, who is holding it down. Without his co-chair, Sister Fonta is dealing with a family situation, so we're grateful. Yes, sir.
We heard redlining, people being displaced. I just want to let you know to one of my other passions. Tomorrow morning, I'm walking. If you go and look at Sycamore Street, and you see the people that's living on the street. And you think about this is a nobody calling it, like you said, like y'all said, different terms, but it is a pandemic. And tomorrow morning, I'm walking with some elected officials to let them see how people, we talked about this, how people had to rely on the library to just be able to wash my face. So it is a pandemic, and we're walking tomorrow evening at 6, so people understand when the library closes, how are people that look like African American, there are some whites, but you think about an equity issue in this country, and you think about all the wealth in this community. To me, one of the things I like to see, how do we have a place so people do not have to sleep in the thunderstorms, about thunderstorms, electrical storms. People are only place they can go, library parking deck, front of a library, or front of a recreation center in 2024. And you see the laws that people are just passing saying that you can be arrested for just, criminalized for just sleeping on the bench. Supreme Court.
It's the Supreme Court passed that. Yes. Who was Reverend Hurst? Are you nearby to do a prayer for us? There he is. Thank you. We really appreciate the Reverend opening up the sanctuary. Yes. Pastor John Hurst.
Amen. Thank you all so very much. I really appreciate you all giving us an opportunity to host this meeting, Philip. We really do. We want to be a partner with you all in everything that you do. And I heard a lot of great things about Beacon Hill, the Bottom, and Decatur, and all of those things. But I just want to let you know that we, again, he said initially that there's only 2 churches that are still left out of the 8, and we're still here every Sunday at 10 a.m. So if you are looking for a place to come to church on Sunday morning, please, ma'am, please, sir, you are welcome to come and visit with us. So we definitely would be glad to have you here. But really, just let you know that we are here as a partner with this organization, and anything that we can do, anytime we can do it, we'll be more than happy to open our doors, even if it's at noon. You want to do that, we're good. And we do have a place downstairs where we can do lunch, so we are here, open and available. Amen? Thank you so much. So we'll go ahead and pray. Father God, we thank you today. We thank you for this opportunity to be here in this meeting. We thank you for these brilliant minds where we've learned so much. And we pray right now, God, that these people who are spoke today will continue to speak about the wrongdoings, continue to speak about the displacement, continue to speak about reparations. And we ask, God, that the Holy Spirit would then take over and enter into the hearts and the minds of the people who need to understand that the people of this Beacon Hill, the Bottom, have been displaced, they have been removed, basically for no apparent reason other than what we've said is a segregation. So Lord, right now we ask that you would allow yourself to come down from the heavens and through the Holy Spirit, land on the hearts, land in the minds of the people so that we can move forward, and people who are part of this Beacon Hill, who are part of this movement, can get what is due them. Lord, we just want to be recognized. We just want to get what's ours, and we want our people, we want our children to understand their history and their place here in Decatur. Lord, right now we just simply thank you. We thank you for everyone who's came out here today. And Lord, we ask that you would give them the same traveling grace that you gave them to get here. Give them that same traveling grace to get back to their home destination. Until we meet again, in the name of Jesus we pray, amen.
We made history.